Hi YouTube, Darth here. The Star Wars Battlefront open beta has ended and it's time to deliver some opinions about the beta and the game. We've still got a few weeks before Star Wars Battlefront's November 17th release date, so there's time to mull over decisions. As this is a beta impressions video, I don't have the full product in front of me, so I'm going to have to make some assumptions based on past experiences. I'm going to break this into two sections. First, what I didn't like, followed by what I did like. Let's talk about the dark side of this beta first. There seems to be a term confusion going on here as to what a dedicated server is and what is in Star Wars Battlefront. Dedicated servers are a single computer, either simulated or sometimes groups of computers, whose sole purpose is to deliver the game to clients. When you play a game of Star Wars Battlefront, your client is logging into that server. A game that does not have dedicated servers would instead have one or more clients fulfill the role of the server. This would obviously be a problem as client authoritative data can be modified. That means cheating. Star Wars Battlefront does have dedicated servers. What it does not have is a server browser. When you connect to a game, you're connecting to a dedicated server, but you don't know which one. It's easy to see how players often confuse these two terms. No server browser means no clan servers, no ability to reliably team up with friends at a rendezvous point, and no way to build a community of players. No customization with no server browser essentially means that there is no way to build your own experience, and particularly no way for admins to police bad behavior. I don't think the lack of a server browser or dedicated servers are deal breakers in and of themselves. When Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 launched, there were a huge number of players on PC that were extremely upset about not having dedicated servers to the point of declaring a boycott. It ultimately didn't matter to the success of that game, and most players just adjusted, including the boycotters, which is somewhat ironic. The matchmaking system worked pretty well at giving players the experience they wanted, playing with friends and enjoying the game. Which gets me to my next point. Playing with friends on PC is a total nightmare in Star Wars Battlefront. There are at least 3 steps in playing a game with any friend: inviting them to your party, optionally inviting them to be your partner, and then starting a game. Except you're not actually starting the game with them. There has to be space in the game for your friends, and they have to respond to the notification that you're in a game before it fills with other players. The more players you add to this mix, the worse the horrible nightmare becomes. I had plenty of times where I would invite players to my party, but they couldn't see each other. Sometimes I couldn't invite players even when they were online and waiting in the lobby. And then when I invited them, they couldn't see my invite, or they wouldn't see the game I've entered. Playing with friends in the Star Wars Battlefront beta was a completely random experience for me. Sometimes it worked, most times it did not. The whole problem was horribly compounded by the fact that players couldn't join my specific game even if they wanted to. A lot of times, my friends would get placed in a queue only to be put on the enemy team. Oh, and once in a game, they couldn't even switch teams to, play with me. Because who would want to play a Star Wars fantasy trip with their friends when they can play against them instead? Now, this frustration would have been completely impossible to deal with if we didn't have direct communication with each other over VoIP. Except the game doesn't have in-game voice. If you haven't heard already, in-game voice is not supported on the PC. There is no in-game VoIP on PC for Star Wars Battlefront, and according to developers, there won't be either. The official line is that players can use whatever third-party communication software they prefer. Plenty of multiplayer games don't have VoIP and do just fine. Battlefield 3 had a strange party mic system that even less people use than Battlefield 4's squad communications. But it's like a car's horn, a communication device that you only need when you really need it. But I can get over it. What bothers me is the lack of communication in general, of which VoIP is just symptomatic. You can't type when you're dead. By default, you won't see communications unless you've been communicating, and for the most part, it's a game about teamwork where the team has almost no way of communicating with one another. During the beta, it seemed like communication was being actively discouraged by every feature in the game. There isn't even a comm-rose. I can see cutting these features if you're running low on development time, but in combination with the lack of server browser and the difficulties in forming a party, how is one supposed to even play this game except in an adversarial lone wolf role? How can I use a server's TeamSpeak if I don't even know what server I'm playing on? How can I even know a gaming community exists if nobody can even talk to me? Aside from the colorful names and occasional teabagging, you might have a hard time convincing me I wasn't playing against mostly robots the whole time. We don't have the whole game here, but there are some other things that I would be loath not to mention, particularly the balance and the terrible PC controls for aerial combat. These are both things that could plausibly be fixed in the full release. As far as balance goes, I'd be safe in saying that even a competent Rebel team on Walker Assault stands a more than fair chance of losing even with the orbital cheese. Now, ion torpedoes could change this, and I've heard that in the alpha it was nearly impossible for the Imperials to win. So clearly that game mode is balanced on a knife's edge, and it will be enlightening to see how it plays out in the full game. Ultimately, the balance of the game is skewed towards evening the player field between players, and there's really nothing wrong about that. It's the audience they're aiming for, and in that respect, most things in this game are brilliantly applied. I wanted to specifically call out the terrible PC aerial controls. I can't imagine why, but I'm constantly in a battle against the aerial auto-aim when I'm tailing a fighter. The game wants to put the crosshairs directly on the target, which only serves to send every shot behind the enemy aircraft. Combined with the lack of control over the orientation of your fighter, and you end up in some very weird positions while flying through the air. If you should be lucky enough to not crash into the ground, another fighter, or shoot down your opponents, there's not much on the ground that's going to stop an experienced pilot from farming infantry for ages, especially on open maps like Hoth. Ultimately, I don't think aerial combat is the main draw of the game, and if you're expecting X-Wing vs TIE Fighter, you're going to be really disappointed. If you didn't see any bugs during your time playing Battlefront, congratulations. You won the lottery. Myself, I saw plenty. Now, I'm going to give a pass to the semi-frequent crashes I had while playing Drop Zone, as I suspect my somewhat unique audio setup may have something to do with that. But the fact that it was only isolated to Drop Zone makes me wonder what in particular was going on there. But the one thing that I could not forgive, that drove me absolutely insane and filled me with frothy rage, was disappearing hero pickups during Walker Assault. In nearly every round I played, a hero pickup either completely disappeared when I got near it, or had the wrong label on it. While it's okay for these to be randomly seeded, telling me that I'm about to get something amazing and then giving me a blaster cannon is enough to make me want to wipe out even the younglings. I get it, it's a beta and bugs happen, but it's this kind of abrupt halt to the fun that takes me completely out of the experience and makes me want to stop playing entirely. I can hope this kind of thing will be fixed by the launch of the full game in November, but track record tells me otherwise. Then there's all the small stuff like missing icons, partner cards glitching out, not getting charges you bought. That stuff is paltry in comparison. But it does make me wonder. That's pretty much all my least favorite things about the beta. In short, it was not the worst beta experience by far, but the negatives certainly detract from the overall experience. But finally, we get to the good stuff, of which there is also plenty. Something that the developers absolutely nailed was the look and feel of the universe. The visuals are spot on, the audio is perfect, just give me a music volume option please, and the technical delivery of the essence of Star Wars is flawless. Driving an AT-ST or AT-AT feels amazing. Playing as Darth Vader makes you feel like a total badass. In one game, I went from hating the experience I was having to absolutely swooning all over the game while swinging my lightsaber around and force choking the miserable rebel scum. All was forgiven. Every facet of this game is absolutely gorgeous, and there are small, even surprising amounts of detail. Did you notice how the game fades using a linear wipe like the movies? That snow accumulates on your blasters? The exaggerated foot trails of the walkers, or the scream of the TIE fighters roaring above you? It's a perfect nostalgia trip, and if you're a Star Wars fan, this is one hell of a toy. If there was a poster around DICE with a message called "Stay on Target," they certainly knocked that out of the park. And by on target, I mean on target with their intended audience. This game is not the next CSGO competitive shooter, but it is a very accessible multiplayer shooter experience. And think about the target audience for this game. The broader DICE reached with this game, the more overall appeal it was going to have. There is no doubt in my mind that DICE definitely nailed that with Star Wars Battlefront's mechanics. The blasters are simplified from their technical predecessors in Battlefield, health regenerates quickly, the player can quickly respawn at any moment to stay in the action, and there's a limitless supply of action despite having much smaller player counts. The game modes are focused and keep players engaged enough with the action through small directions. The matches in Star Wars Battlefront are fast. Most last between 7 and 15 minutes. Compare this to Battlefield, where the games can last as many as 45 minutes or more. Despite the smaller time to work with, I feel like a lot more epic action gets packed into that small time frame. On PC, the loading times were comparatively less than recent Battlefield titles as well. You can get in, have some fun, and get out in a third of the time games like Battlefield ask you to invest. It's actually pretty nice, especially when you're short on time and don't have a whole day to dedicate to gaming. For as frustrating as I found many parts of the beta to be, I couldn't stay away and I couldn't put it down. Despite being negative about some parts of the game, I'm still quite eager to pick it up in a few weeks' time. But I'm also a Star Wars fan, as you might have been able to figure out by now. I did want to mention replayability, and if the game shipped with just 2 planets and 2 separate game modes, I think we'd all be pretty bored pretty quick. There were times in the beta where I didn't need to play a 7th round of Walker Assault or Drop Zone, but given the breadth of options we're going to have at launch and the fact that DICE and EA are already pitching 4 expansions worth of content, I don't think we're going to run out of things to do for quite some time. Now, if you found yourself impossibly bored 2 hours into the beta, this might not be your cup of tea. Myself, I found it to be quite compelling even despite the similarities in 20+ hours of beta play. I think I summed up my experience with one phrase. There are some wonderful experiences in this game that are unfortunately attached to the rest of the game. If you're not a Star Wars fan and you're not interested in a less than competitive shooter, this game probably won't be for you. Myself, I certainly plan to pick this game up despite my misgivings, but there was very little the beta could have done to mess that up. But I want to be very clear about one thing. This was not a beta, this was a demo. Like the two demos termed betas that preceded it in Battlefield Hardline and Battlefield 4, what you see is pretty much what you can expect to get in the full game. There's not a whole lot that DICE is going to be able to accomplish in 6 weeks before launch. They could surprise us, which would break precedent. So my final analysis is, I found the beta to be mostly fun and I'll be buying it. If you didn't like the beta or Star Wars isn't your thing, you'll probably want to wait until launch reviews are in before taking the plunge. Ultimately, this is a wonderful Star Wars toy for fans despite its dents and scratches. That's it for this Impressions video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the Star Wars Battlefront Open Beta. After one last Battlefront themed video tomorrow, I'll be getting back to my regularly scheduled Battlefield content until November. Battlefront releases on November the 17th in North America and November the 19th in Europe and Australia. EA Access members on Xbox One get the game 5 days earlier because promo and dollar bills, y'all. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time, YouTube.